Vertical Raise is the premier online donation platform, utilizing email, text messaging, and social media campaigns to exponentially increase the reach of your fundraiser. With detailed tracking and the complete personalization of every page, Vertical Raise provides an easy system that works. Our experienced representatives have made us the most effective fundraising platform available. We look forward to the opportunity in helping elevate your program to the next level and reaching your goals. Visit online or call today.
This is a Queen Bee Radio High School sports presentation.
Welcome to another edition of the Queen Bee Radio High School Sports Roundup, presented by Vertical Raise Milwaukee. We're back from our holiday hiatus, and I'm joined by Steve Prestegard to catch things up on the high school boys basketball scene. We'll also talk about girls basketball. We also have Chuck Rasmussen joining us for high school wrestling, and our one-on-one with a great one interview with Mineral Point boys basketball head coach Dan Burreson, all straight ahead on our show. But talking about boys basketball, Steve, you, me, Mark even said, we were on the call of the Lancaster Holiday Boys Basketball Tournament back on December 27th, featuring the 4 teams related to the Up and Up family. And the Darlington Redbirds came away as champions of that tournament, defeating Royal and Potosi, handing Potosi their first loss of the season. We talked about it during the first pregame of the tournament about how kind of loaded this tournament was, with all 4 teams playing, very good basketball, 3 of the teams being ranked. And, to just kind of summarize the tournament, from a macro level, it was a fun and very competitive tournament, with Darlington coming away with 2 very big wins to improve their record at 9-1.
It was. It was a fun day to spend watching basketball. This is certainly the first time that these teams have played when 3 of them were ranked. And you'll notice that I think Royal slipped 1 spot after the tournament. Potosi didn't move at all. And Darlington, is still up there. And you have to believe that these are, 3 teams that are going to have some impact in the postseason. The storyline we didn't get to, because Darlington, won the tournament, was the possibility of Potosi and Royal playing each other, because they could conceivably, if everything works out, play in the sectional final for a trip to state in Division 5, because Potosi and Royal are in separate halves of the sectional. But, you look at Darlington, they're every bit as good as they advertise. They are athletic. They are deep. They play defense very physically. And they're, once again, out of an extremely loaded top of the Southwest Wisconsin Activities League. Potosi, they suffered their first loss of the season, but honestly, they're really, really good, particularly for a Division 5 team. And they're a team that has more size than you usually see from a Division 5 team, which is, I think, an advantage for them. I think Royal looked like they did last year. Most of their players are actually back from last year. And so you got to figure they're going to be making a deep playoff run up north, so to speak. And then you have Lancaster, which has been, they lost 2 games, so they're 5-5. But the reality of it is that's better than they were all of last season. They have more wins already now than they have all of last season. So it's going to be hard for them to make any noise in the postseason, just because they are in an extraordinarily loaded sectional with Darlington, obviously, and Mineral Point and Cuba City and so on. But this is definitely the best field that they've had in this tournament, and that made it really fun to watch.
Yeah, I think the thing for Lancaster, just having been able to see them a couple times so far this season, I think the big thing coming out of this tournament was just the fact that they were probably the least experienced team in that tournament. They have some very good athletes, Taylor Williams, Michael Murphy, Brendan Gildersleeve, now back from injury. He's been worked into the rotation quite a bit for the Flying Arrows. They're a fun team to watch, and that's a team that's kind of had a chip on their shoulder. To begin the season, they've played some very good basketball. They just ran into some very good teams on their home floor as the hosts of the tournament. So I don't think that there's anything, really that Lancaster needs to hang their hat on it. But the issues that they had, focused around turnovers and just taking care of the basketball, that pretty much just comes from experience, at least from our vantage point. And hopefully those are some things that they can get corrected as they move deeper into the SWC conference season. And you were mentioning earlier, Steve, about the potential Royal Potosi matchup in the sectional final. Remember, that nearly happened had Seth Bunders not scored 53 points against Potosi in that sectional semifinal last season. So, that was a very real possibility and very much could be a potential of that, which would be a very fun matchup between the Upna brothers on the head coaching sidelines, and the matchup among cousins as well for an opportunity.
Yes, absolutely.
That'd be a very fun sectional final, but a lot of season yet to be played. So we'll keep tabs on that as the season goes along. But there were a number of other holiday tournaments during the winter break, and one headline that kind of stood out to me, Steve, was Shullsburg taking down Scales Mound. And Shullsburg has been one of those teams over the last couple of weeks that they've been raising some eyebrows a bit. They defeated River Ridge in a big Six Rivers West conference matchup, and then they take down Scales Mound during the winter break. Again, just one of those teams to kind of keep an eye on, and now they kind of factor into be one of those second place teams in the Six Rivers West.
It could be right. It could be a situation where actually Shullsburg and Scales Mound played for the second time this year in that tournament, and maybe that had something to do with it. Maybe Shullsburg Scales Mound just had a bad night. That happens. They came in with one loss. Now they have two. Certainly, anybody who thinks that a team is going to go undefeated in a basketball season is extraordinarily optimistic, and so I'm pretty sure that Scales Mound's going to have a good year anyway. But yeah, Shullsburg is one of a few teams that really has kind of surprised. And you look at they still have Potosi to play at least once more. I haven't seen their schedule yet, but that is a team certainly that could end up making some noise that people didn't necessarily expect them to.
Yeah, looking at the standings across the area, I mean, the teams that are in the front, those are the teams that we kind of expected to be there. Looking at the Six Rivers West, as we're mentioning it, of course, Potosi 3-0 in conference play, 8-1. Their only loss was to Darlington in that Lancaster Holiday tournament. But once you get past Potosi, you'd think, would River Ridge be, in that mix? River Ridge is 1-3 in conference play, and they are 7-4 overall. But then you have teams like Highland, they're 3-1, 6-3 under Coach Foes in his first year with that program. And then you look at, kind of the same thing with the SWC. Platteville's, at the top with Dodgeville with 2-0 records, although Platteville a much better overall record with a 6-2 mark as opposed to Dodgeville's 4-6. The Swall we mentioned, Mineral Point and Darlington being the top two teams there so far. Southwestern in that tied for second place spot with a 3-1 record. The top teams are what we expect them to be, but now there kind of seems to be a changing in the guard a bit with these conferences, where teams that we kind of expect to be in the top part of the mix, not necessarily where we might have anticipated them to be. And that opens things up for teams like a Shullsburg, teams like a Southwestern, teams like a Lancaster to factor into the conference title mix.
Yeah, it would be interesting. Well, you won't be able to do this until after the season, but it'll be interesting to see why it turned out like it did. How is it that teams are in some cases underperforming and in some cases certainly overperforming. Prairie du Chien, for instance, is off to quite a slow start, but they also haven't played very many games, and it's always interesting in Prairie du Chien's case that they very, very backload their schedule. They hardly play any games before the season, before the new year comes. And so, maybe that has something to do with it. I think the other thing that's noticeable, this is a trend both in boys and in girls. I have no explanation for this. And, maybe I'm like misreading this, but it seems as though in most conferences, there are some teams that are really good right up at the top. You look at the top teams in the SWAL, for instance, and there are other teams that are having really tough seasons. There's still some teams that haven't won a game yet this year, or won maybe just one game this year. And it's kind of funny that there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of middle ground this year.
Mm-hmm.
Probably the most of it probably is in, it is in the Six Rivers West, when you have, three teams basically, or four teams actually hovering around 500, Highland, Cassville, Shullsburg, and River Ridge. But other than that, you can look at a lot of teams, and there are some teams that have really, really good records, and there are teams that have poor records. And for whatever reason, it just kind of seems to me as though there's not a whole lot of teams that are kind of hovering around, the 500 mark. I have no explanation for why that is. And it may not even be something that continues, over the whole year, but that's what gets noticed at this point anyway.
Yeah, it's one of those things too where we don't know necessarily what the health of each team is. There might be some, players that are, out with injury or have limited time, based on injuries that they have. And, it could be one of those things too where, just the way that, games are scheduled. You mentioned, Prairie du Chien, it might be that, basketball season might fully or truly start once the new year switches over. You avoid those holiday distractions, and you can really, hone in on your play once the new year starts. But it is very, very interesting how things have shaken out so far. Again, the front runners are kind of who we anticipated them to be, but there are, some teams where, that might be a bit, underperforming, or some that are overperforming and are sudden contenders in their respective conferences. But overall, looking at the boys basketball scene, Steve, what's kind of the thing that stands out to you the most so far from what we've seen?
Well, the least surprising thing probably is the fact that Mineral Point and Darlington are up at the top of the SWAL. That's, nobody's surprised. I think Southwestern is kind of having, maybe exceeding expectations a little bit. And Cuba City's a little less so. If you look at the SWAL, Platteville seems to be, at the moment, Platteville seems to be the best team by far, given that they've got a significantly better overall record than anybody else. And what's interesting about the Hillman, keep in mind, they started the year by losing their first two games, but they haven't lost since then. So they are, they're off to, they got past the difficult teams to play at the start, and now are playing quite well. No real surprise at the top of the Six Rivers West. Underneath Potosi is kind of more interesting. Argyle seems to be having quite a good year in the Six Rivers East compared to, sometimes what you see. There was one year, in fact, where a recent year where everybody in the Six Rivers East, except for the champion, had a losing overall record. And the only teams that won playoff games were teams that were playing each other in the Six Rivers East. But Argyle, I think, is somewhat of a pleasant surprise. The other team is in the Ridge and Valley, North Crawford. They're undefeated, but they are being chased by Ithaca, who is 9-1. And those are the best two teams by far in the Ridge and Valley. So that race is going to be quite interesting to see how it pans out. And in the NUI West, going into Illinois for a moment, yeah, Scales Mountain has two losses, but Again, their overall record is much better than anybody else's. You do have River Ridge at 9-5, but everybody else is kind of a, mid-pack or less than mid-pack team. Probably one of the teams that's having a little better than expected season, I would imagine, also is probably Galena as well. They're off to a pretty decent start as well with their new assistant coach Jerry Pettigrew. But of course, having Glasgow back from last year, that certainly makes a huge difference for them as well.
Yep, definitely. And looking at the Queen Bee Radio schedule coming up for boys basketball on Friday night, it's an all SWAL night. We have Mineral Point at Fenimore on 97.7 Country WGLR, Darlington at Southwestern on Extreme 107.1, and Cuba City at Iowa Grant on Super Hits 106. And then on Saturday, a girls-boys doubleheader honoring Aaron Lancaster in a cancer awareness doubleheader. Darlington and Highland, both games at Highland. The boys game will be the second half of that doubleheader on Saturday. Mark Evensay will have the call of that one on Extreme 107.1. And then on Monday, Steve, you get to make the trip to Fiserv Forum to cover the Platteville Hillmen. As who's Platteville taking on in that one? They have Monona Grove.
Right. Now here's some, I got some personal history with this because the very first journalism job I had back in the mid 1980s was working for the Monona newspaper. So I wasn't the guy that covered Monona Grove very often, but I did do their photography for sport, their shooting games, including the last Monona Grove game, or the second to last Monona Grove game I covered was at UW-Platteville as a sectional semifinal when they played Lancaster, when Lancaster was coming into the sectional undefeated. Best team they've had since their state team in 1917. Unfortunately for the Flying Arrows, they walked in a little wounded. They were also playing a team in Monona Grove that was kind of like what Southwestern is now, a smaller team in a primarily larger division conference. So, they get beat up in the regular season, but then the postseason comes and they're playing teams more their size. And, ultimately Monona Grove won that game going away and got to the sectional final before they lost to Wisconsin Dells, who happened to have a player named TJ Van Wee, who happened to play at UW-Platteville after that and won a national championship for Bo Ryan. So that's my personal history. That one of the players on those Monona Grove teams was a guy named Dan Zwiefel. He's now the coach. They had two players also named Mark and Eric Toyola, and there is an Emmett Toyola playing for Monona Grove. So I'm feeling very old after just looking at the roster. But that's going to be fun, I think, Monday afternoon. They get a chance to play in an NBA arena, and hardly anybody gets a chance to do that. Although Richland Center is playing at Fiserv on Saturday, actually, right, against Baraboo. But they're going to play on a 94-foot floor. And as everybody knows, I think any team fortunate enough to get to state to play at the Cole Center or at the Resch Center, those are college floors. And so having another experience on a college floor before state is not necessarily a bad, it's a pretty good thing, actually. But they're doing a kind of a double header offer because I think there's a combination ticket sale at Platteville High School also for that night's Bucks game, which is against Utah. Pretty sure Carl Malone and John Stockton are not going to make an appearance, but then again, is Sidney Moncrief isn't going to be there or whatever. But Giannis will be there, I think. So it's going to be a fun trip in Milwaukee on Monday.
Yeah, definitely. And what a cool experience for the Hillmen and our good friend Mike Hoosier being able to coach his team on an NBA floor. That's going to be a really awesome experience. Again, that game will be on Monday early afternoon. We'll have coverage beginning after 12:30 on ESPN Radio AM 1590 WPVL. That'll wrap up our boys basketball recap. But coming up next, we will chat with Chuck Rasmussen to cover some high school wrestling. And then we will have our one-on-one with the Great One interview presented by People's State Bank with Mineral Point boys basketball head coach Dan Burreson. Steve will be back to close out the show with our girls basketball recap. We'll have more on the Queen Bee Radio High School Sports Roundup after this on YouTube and SoundCloud.
Grow your business by enhancing your digital marketing efforts with Queen Bee Radio and Phase 3 Digital. We provide customized solutions based on your business's unique needs, including targeted advertising, website development, and search engine optimization. Contact us at 608-349-2000 or visit p3da.com/Platteville to learn more.
Back on the Queen Bee Radio High School Sports Roundup, presented by Vertical Raised Milwaukee. It's now time to catch up on the high school wrestling action from our area, and we're joined by our resident Hall of Famer, Chuck Rasmussen. Raz, good to see you. Happy New Year. Hope the holidays treated you well. And we had the Bi-State Classic happen during the winter break, and it was an outstanding performance for a few of our local teams, including Iowa Grant Highland, finishing third out of 72 teams at the Bi-State Classic. Other local teams competing: Prairie du Chien finished 11th, Mineral Point 19th, Riverdale 22nd, Dodgeville 39th, River Valley 43rd, Cuba City Benton Southwestern 45th, Richland Center 48th, Belmont Platteville 50th, and Lancaster finishing 59th. But Raz, for Iowa Grant Highland, Elliot Biba, the champion at 138 pounds, Tyson Imhoff finishing second at 150, Jackson Bussey second at 157. A really outstanding performance in a very stacked Bi-State Classic for the Iowa Grant Highland Co-op.
I would agree with you, and they had several others that did place too. And just to get to that second day at the Bi-State Wrestling Tournament is quite an accomplishment as it is. They did wrestle very well as a team. As you said, they ended up third overall, or not only third in Division 3, but third overall, and that includes Division 2 and Division 1. And it's a stacked tournament, very, very quality. So yeah, a lot of several individuals other than the Iowa Grant group did well too. So it was good to see. We'll see a lot of those people down the road here in the next couple of weeks. So I did not attend. Second time since in 40 some years that I did not attend. But I did watch the finals on the internet. So it's good.
Yeah, but what were kind of your takeaways from the tournament as a whole?
Quality as always. It's advertised as the best wrestling tournament in the Midwest. I'm close to agreeing with that. It probably was as far as last weekend. You got the Cheesehead coming up. That's probably maybe a notch above that, but it's very good. I also need to mention several of the ladies from our area placed in the tournament too. The Olivia Ball was fourth, I believe, in her weight class. A young lady from Mineral Point was third in that same weight class, and a couple others did very well also. So very good tournament.
Yeah, very fun tournament to kind of keep tabs on as it was happening for those 2 days up in La Crosse. And again, some outstanding performances by our local teams in that tournament. And now we'll turn our attention to the tournament that we have coming up this Saturday that we'll have on our Queen Bee Radio family of stations. It is the Lancaster Wrestling Invitational. 7 teams from our area competing, including Cuba City, Southwestern Benton, Darlington Blackhawk, the host Lancaster, Platteville, Belmont, and River Ridge. And then Aquinas and Broadhead from kind of outside our listening area coming into the tournament as well. Aquinas finishing second overall at the Bi-State tournament. And Raz, just kind of looking at the tournament as a whole, the 7 teams that are competing, what are some of the things that you're looking for as we head into this Lancaster Wrestling Invitational?
Well, I think the numbers as far as the teams that are competing this year and the individuals on the teams, the numbers are going to be up. We've seen that all season long. The team numbers are up, and that's a very good thing. Just to note, Aquinas is bringing their varsity reserve. They'll probably sprinkle in a couple of their varsity wrestlers that have missed a meet somewhere along the line. Broadhead Judah's coming over also. I think they're going to have 11 or 12 probably in their lineup. So I think it's going to be a good tournament. The top 2 or 3 in each weight class are going to be very quality wrestlers. Should be fun.
Looking forward to seeing how that turns out. We will have coverage beginning shortly after 9 o'clock on ESPN Radio, AM 1590, WPVL, and we will switch our afternoon coverage over to 97.7 Country, WGLR. All the wrestling action can also be watched on the Queen Bee Radio Sports YouTube channel on Saturday. Again, the start time for the tournament itself begins at 9:30. Weigh-ins will be at 8 o'clock, and we will break down the brackets and everything during our Raleigh Cheese pre-match coverage shortly after 9 o'clock. Raz, looking forward to seeing how this tournament shakes out. It's been a fun wrestling season so far. Just looking ahead, even beyond the Lancaster invite, what are some of the things that you're kind of looking for as we have now switched into the 2024 portion of the calendar for this wrestling season?
Yeah, well, this is kind of what I consider the middle third of the season, the wrestling season. I think you're going to see some very, very fun dual meets as they go down the road. I see the Iowa Grant Fenimore dual meet as being fun. We saw, well, one of the teams that's coming to the tournament this weekend, Darlington Blackhawk. They defeated Mineral Point earlier. They've got a very nice team. I was talking to their coach, Jim Wolf, who was a former graduate state champion for Lancaster last weekend at a youth tournament. And he's pretty excited about their team, and rightfully so. Riverdale, they're not at the Lancaster Invitational this year, but they've got a nice team too, and they've shown well in the Reedsburg Invitational, the Richland Center Invitational, and then up the Bi-State also. There's going to be some great dual meets. That Clash tournament is
loaded.
It will be. You medal in the Clash list this year. You've accomplished something. It should be fun.
High school wrestling as good as it gets, especially this time of the year. Looking forward to seeing how it all turns out. And again, we'll have the Lancaster Wrestling Invitational coming up on Saturday. Morning coverage on ESPN Radio, AM 1590 WPVL. Afternoon coverage over on 97.7 Country, WGLR. And video coverage all day long on the Queen Bee Radio Sports YouTube channel. Raz, thanks for joining us for some wrestling talk. And we'll have more on the Queen Bee Radio High School Sports Roundup presented by Vertical Race Milwaukee after this on YouTube and SoundCloud. This one-on-one with the Great One interview is presented by People's State Bank.
Looking for a checking account with no monthly requirements or service charge? People's State Bank's People's Checking Account is just what you're looking for. This account includes free debit card, online and mobile banking, bill pay, and much more at no cost to you. You heard that right. No cost to you. We're your local community bank ready to serve you. People's State Bank. Member FDIC.
Welcome back to the Queen Bee Radio High School Sports Roundup presented by Vertical Raise Milwaukee. It's now time for us to go one-on-one with the Great One presented by People's State Bank. And I'm very excited to chat with our guest today. Our guest is a Hall of Fame boys basketball coach in his 29th season coaching. He guided the Mineral Point Pointers to a state runner-up finish in 2015 and most recently back-to-back sectional appearances in the last 2 seasons. His Pointers are also currently the #1 ranked team in Division IV in the latest SwissSports.net coaches poll. Our guest is Dan Burreson, the head coach of the Mineral Point Pointers boys basketball team. Coach, good to catch up with you. Good to see you. How have you been?
Been good, Tyler, and I appreciate you having me on here today, but things have gone well, so.
Absolutely. It seems like things are going well. And we'll talk about this year's Pointers team in a bit. But before we do, we love talking with the coaches about their coaching journeys, how it all started and how things have gone and how their journey has progressed. So take us back to how your coaching journey began and what's kept you involved in coaching all these years.
Yeah, well, actually, I started coaching some baseball in Dodgeville, probably a couple years out of high school. And from there, my high school basketball coach asked me, Bob Buck, who's the Hall of Fame coach, asked me if I had any interest in coaching some middle school basketball. So I did that. And at the same time, I was taking some classes at UW-Platteville and took Bo Ryan's coaching theory class. That kind of opened the door for me to work some camps at Platteville. And I was eventually asked to be part of the Platteville staff. So I coached under him for 4 years, which was a fantastic experience. And then when I got the job at Mineral Point, I coached under Jim Bennett for a couple years before he stepped down. And I think with those 3 guys, Bob Buck and Bo Ryan and Jim Bennett, I could not have had a better background, a better experience for what was to come. Probably what keeps me in it, I think it hopefully keeps me a little bit young. The kids, every year, things are different every year, right? There's different players and different combinations. And And I think the kids keep me coming back year after year. Plus, I'm very fortunate. I've got a really outstanding group of assistant coaches who do a lot of the work, who do a lot of the coaching. You know, Brett McGraw's been with me for quite a while, a former player of mine. Parker Downey, another former player, has been with me for quite a while. And then Garrett Wendhausen, who's been with us for the last couple of years. So, you know, those guys really have, you know, share the burden with me. So it's a team effort here.
Absolutely. And obviously you've coached a lot of great teams and great players over the years. And, you know, the accomplishments and the awards that you and your teams have earned are the things that most people tend to, you know, remember. But for you, are there any, you know, personal accomplishments or memories that you hold close that maybe others aren't necessarily aware of?
Well, you know, I think there's probably memories with every year, and sometimes it might be teams that maybe aren't as well known. You know, one team that always kind of stands out to me a little bit is our 2006 team that made a sectional run. We were under 500. We had struggled throughout the course of the year, but kind of found a way. And then the kids just kept believing and kept getting better and better. You know, I say the same thing about the 98 team that got beat in the sectional finals to Randolph. You know, we were struggling during parts of the year, but we just tell them to kind of believe in what we're doing, you know, trust the process, as people say. And sometimes it's those unexpected runs, you know, that they're all rewarding, but those unexpected runs, sometimes they kind of, you know, they're kind of something special.
Yep. And in addition to your coaching responsibilities, you're also on the executive board for the Wisconsin Basketball Coaches Association. You're the Hall of Fame selection chair, as well as the Achievement Award chair. You're also a previous president of the organization. From your point of view, how important is it to have a strong association like the WBCA to the game of basketball in Wisconsin? And what made you decide to be involved in the organization in an executive and officer role?
I'll answer the second part first. The reason I got involved initially, it was in the late 1990s. And at the time, there was 4 divisions in high school basketball in Wisconsin, but we only had 3 all-star games. So there was, you know, I think it was, they might have even went by letters, but I think it was divisions 1, 2, and there was a 3-4 game. And that made no sense to me that there was not separate games for Division 3 and Division 4. So that's when I kind of got involved in trying to push for 4 divisions of all-star games, and that led to an involvement in the all-star game, a minor role. And then for about 10 years, I was the all-star chairman. And then from there, I became part of this Hall of Fame thing as well. But it was that wanting to have 4 divisions of all-star games because we had 4 divisions in the state. I think the WBCA plays a vital role in so much progress that we've made over the years. I mean, 18-minute halves in particular, I think, was a big one. You know, changing, you know, and you can argue this either way, but the number of divisions, you know, the WBCA has at least helped guided that. Hasn't really stated they're in favor of this or that, but helped guided that discussion, I think, a little bit. But I think really the 18-minute halves, I think, has been good for the game. And there's been other things too over the years, not any are coming to mind right now, but, you know, I think, you know, we've been out in front and we've got one of the biggest organizations in the country, have over 4,000 members. You know, Jerry Pettigrew has been the executive director of this thing for a long time. And it's one of the top organizations in the country. I think our Hall of Fame is pretty neat. And everything I think is done first class.
Yep. And looking at, you know, the current state of basketball, you know, in the state of Wisconsin, if you had to, you know, make a rule change or change something about the game, is there a particular rule or something that you would look to add or change about high school basketball in Wisconsin?
You know, at first I'd want to keep what we have in terms of the halves. I think that's important. I think the 2 areas of major discussion, and people are on different sides of it. The shot clock obviously is one. And I think at first I was probably opposed to that. Now I would be fine with the shot clock. You know, the other thing that keeps coming up from time to time is the circle underneath the basket, you know, in terms of the charge circle, because, you know, a lot of basketball purists think you should not be able to take a charge directly underneath the hoop, right? And I think that would make sense to me as well. Those would probably be the 2 biggest ones right now. There may be others, but those 2, I think, in particular.
All right, well, looking at this year's Pointers team, currently sitting at 10-0, coming off a 70-44 win over your alma mater, Dodgeville, on Tuesday night. Team is also number 1 in the latest WisSports.net coaches poll in Division 4, unseating the previously number 1 ranked Darlington a couple weeks ago. Everything on paper seems to be going as well as it can go, and it really feels like that there's something special with this year's team. But from your point of view, how would you assess your team's play so far this season?
Well, I've been pleased with what we've done so far. I think the two things that we've done, I think that we're willing to share the ball and we're willing to defend. And I think those two things, especially the willingness to defend, will always give you a chance. So those things I've been happy with. The other thing I've been pleased with is our depth. We don't drop off when we go to the bench. We've got some guys coming in that have given us some real quality minutes night in and night out. Now we realize, we've got a lot of the season left to play, a lot of tough games left to play. Within the conference and outside the conference. But I like, the approach that the guys bring to practice every day. And I like the progress that we've made. The key is we have to continue to make progress day in and day out as we move forward here through the second half.
But it'll be fun to see how far this team goes and what accomplishments they'll have when everything is all said and done. The Pointers' next game will be on Friday night versus Fenimore, and you can listen to that game over on 97.7 Country WGLR. Coach, great to catch up with you. Thanks a lot for joining us, and good luck to you and your Pointers the rest of the season.
Thanks, Todd. I really appreciate it.
All right, that's head coach Dan Burreson, the head coach of the Mineral Point boys basketball team. We'll have more on the Queen Bee Radio High School Sports Roundup after this on YouTube and SoundCloud.
Check out Subs.com. Subs is Southwest Wisconsin's go-to supplement store. Find all your favorite supplement brands at the best prices from local people. Fuel your fitness journey. Subs.com, your go-to supplement store with locations in Fenimore and Dubuque.
This week's highlight reel is presented by Subs.com. Three-pointer on the right side, no good for Willward. And Lancaster comes down with the rebound. 3-on-1 coming back the other way. Nice pass to the left side and a nice finish for Mallory Olmstead. Lancaster gets the lead 8-6, and Lancaster on top of East Dubuque. Warriors quickly back the other way. Shot put up, bucket counts, and the foul for number 5, Sydney Schoenhardt. And a scramble for the rebound. Dolan collects it. She's going to load up for 3, and she knocks it down. Ball over on the high right side for Willward. Lobs it over to the right corner. Now a pass down low, poked away and stolen away by Katie Martin. Back the other way, puts up the layup and deposits 2 on that Midwest One bank shot. Volleyball for the rebound. East Dubuque gets it. Dolan fires away right side of the lane. No good. Dolan gets her own rebound. Turns around, banks it in. What a shot. And East Dubuque collects the rebound. Dolan at the board for East Dubuque. They have it. Shot put up on the left side and knocking down the 2. Here's a long 2 for Sydney Schoenhardt. She's now in double figure scoring. She's got 11 on the game. And it's 33-28 as a steal by Dolan. Finds a teammate and a finish for Mia Willward. And just like that, East Dubuque is back to within 3. East Dubuque still within 2, 35-33, 13:25 to go. Dolan puts up a shot right side, banks it in to tie it. Cross-court pass to Dolan in the left corner. Dolan, crossover dribble into the paint, scoop layup, good, and the foul, and East Dubuque is in the lead. 38, 10:40 to go in regulation. Stop and pop, three-pointer is knocked down by Mia Willward. To the free throw line. Now to Morgan for 3. She swishes it. Ball give it back to Weber. She's going to load up for 3 on the right side. Knocks it down. 22 points. 17 in the second half. And another 3 is rattled down for Mia Willward. You knock it down. It's a 2-possession game with 4 seconds to go. Otherwise, East Dubuque has a chance. And the free throw rattles out. East Dubuque gets it. They push it down the floor. Overshoots. Willward goes out of bounds. And Lancaster wins one heck of a basketball game. 66-63. What an effort by both teams tonight. Raise back to Murphy. Corner 3. Swishes it. Skip pass down low to Schmidt-Cox, now back out, three-pointer, and the three-pointer is good for number 21, Hunter Gunderson. Steve Davis to the free throw line. Takes on the double team now, kicks out corner three on the way. Rattling it down is Hunter Gunderson. Back-to-back threes for Hunter Gunderson. Boscobel with their first lead of the game, 6-4. Davis stops his dribble at the right elbow, finds an open teammate, three-pointer on the way, and knocking it down is Tucker Schmid-Cox. Williams going to go baseline, now back out to Gildersleeve. Gildersleeve driving in, right-handed scoop, layup goes in. Now back to Davis, fires away from three, knocks it down. Burreson right side of the paint, now back out to the left wing, three-pointer on the way, knocks it down. Tyler Timmerman joins the three-point party for Lancaster. It's going to lob it into Davis. Davis takes on the double team, gets the bucket to go down, and the foul again. And he's able to get it across center court, being guarded heavily by Lance Ryder, and the Arrows come away with the steal. They have numbers back the other way. Dane Kaufman with the layup, and he knocks it down. Looking down low, now decides to dribble in the paint, gonna kick it back out to Taylor Williams. He's gonna load up for three, knocks it down. Stops the dribble right side of the paint, kicks out to the right side to Ryder. Now down low to Raceback, back out to Ryder. Three-pointer on the way, knocks it down. Coming away with it is Lance Ryder, dribbles it down the floor, hands out to Michael Murphy on the left wing, skips back to the left wing to Timmerman. Timmerman in the lane, floater, rattles out, and the ball rolls off the side of the rim. Brings back there for the rebound, gets quadruple teamed, and somehow gets the shot to go down. My goodness, what a shot by Raceback. He's in double figures now with 10. And Davis dribbles to the right side of the paint, kicks out, open three, left wing, knocking it down is Stuart Trump. Lead of the game, 39-28, an 11-point lead for the Arrows. Pass over to the right side, three-pointer rolls in for Hunter Gunderson. Overhead toss to Dane Kaufman, now a cross-court pass to the near side, three-pointer put up, and knocking it down is Zach Herbson.
16:08 to play, first half. Here's a nice feed down low to Isaiah Groom, who was cutting to the basket. It looked like Uppana was going to do a pull-up 15-footer. Instead, it was a pass to the breaking Groom, who scores 4 points for him, and it's 4-0 Potosi. Three on the other end, good by Heath Poppy. He'll just attack and go straight to the rack and score. Heath Poppy taking things into his own hands. Pass to Ezra Groom. Underneath, draws the foul and one. Heath hands it off to Grady. Right wing, long three. Got it. Grady Poppy's first three. He's a freshman. Drills it. Rather stolen. Berendez in transition. A layup. Good. And just like that, Shullsburg has a lead for the first time tonight. Dishes. Rotates. Poppy. Three. Got it. That's Heath Poppy. His second three. Looking to split the double team. Kicks to Wonderland for three. He got it. Gavin Wonderland's first points of the game. Tie it up, 19 apiece. Jackson Oyen, top of the key, passes off right side to Wonderland for three, and he hit it. Berendez kicks it to the right side. Heath Poppy stops and pops for three. Ball on the floor. Groom puts it up, draws the foul, and one. Pass inside to Poppy. Now three from Grady Poppy. He hit it. Grady Poppy's second three to Wonderland. Inside Weber, off the window, and one. The corner by Esser is good. Drives the lane, backdoor pass, and powering it up is Bennett Smith, his first field goal. Back over to Dreschmeyer, pull up three, got it. First three for John Dreschmeyer. Highland starting to pull away a little, 16-9. Three, top of the key, good. Tanner Simmons, his first three, 18-13, Belmont within five. Three, top of the key is good. Splish, splash, Bennett Smith from downtown. Another timeout taken on the floor. This is a full timeout now. We'll take it. Right side, Kettler, step back three, got it. Carter Kettler's second three in a row. He hit one right before half. Inside the Laney, easy layup. Good decision by Casey. Found the open player underneath, easy bucket. 6-4 Belmont. Back Back out to Frederick. She'll drive left baseline and scores. It's a nifty move. Pass out to Bedward. Cross-court pass. Miller for three. Got it. Caitlin Miller drills the three. And it's 9-7. Highland their first lead. 2-point lead with 12:23 to go. Inside, turnaround in the low post by Kate Terrell, no good. Putback is good by Miller. It is Highland ball, but a steal. This one picked off, and Rundy will lay it in on the other end. A nice steal and score by Reese Rundy, her first field goal. In the corner, Raymaker underneath. Lainey Rickers powers it up 4-2. Bounce pass to Miller. Underneath to Terrell. Terrell off the glass and one. Sophie Terrell scores her first field goal and a chance at a three-point play as Lainey Rickers hit her. Here's a three, and it's good. It's Terrell, Sophie Terrell.
Vertical Raise is the premier online donation platform, utilizing email, text messaging, and social media campaigns to exponentially increase the reach of your fundraiser. With detailed tracking and the complete personalization of every page, Vertical Raise provides an easy system that works. Our experienced representatives have made us the most effective fundraising platform available. We look forward to the opportunity in helping elevate your program to the next level and reaching your goals. Visit online or call today.
Back on the Queen Bee Radio High School Sports Roundup, presented by Vertical Raise Milwaukee. Now time to talk girls hoops, and I'm rejoined by Steve Prestegard, our Galena truther. And Steve, Galena losing their first game of the season. They now sit at 14-1. Cuba City, one of the teams that Galena has beaten. Cuba City also fell to a very good team in Arrowhead the last week or so. But kind of looking at, girls basketball as a whole, what's kind of stood out to you at this point in the season?
Well, some of it is to no surprise, to have Galena ranked number one in 1A in Illinois is kind of like being surprised that the sun comes up in the east. It's not, they are every bit as good as advertised, even if they did lose a game in what, by the way, was a 16-team tournament that they were part of in the Bloomington Normal area. So they are still ranked number one in 1A, and I think for good reason. I'm not quite sure how the rankings work in Illinois according to Max Preps, but I have to think that they're, they've got the big three back from last year. I actually think that there's some ways that they're a better team than they were last year because they have a little more of an inside presence this year with a little bit more usable height inside. So that's not a surprise at all. I do think that Platteville may be a little bit of a surprise, only because if you focused on their 0-4 start and kind of tune them out, well, that was a mistake because they are right now 8-5. Their only other loss this year was to Dubuque Hempstead, which is a much bigger school. They have played already the two teams that looked like they were going to challenge for the SWC title, and they beat both of them on the road in their best games of the year, beating Prairie du Chien and then just really taking it to Dodgeville before Christmas. So they're a pleasant surprise. I think that is obviously a three-team race in that conference. Not really a surprise who is on top in the SWAL once again. Some combination of Darlington, Cuba City, and Mineral Point. Fenimore is kind of a pleasant surprise because I don't think people thought a lot about them, but they're 8-4 and they're tied for second place and tied for third place in the conference. So they've been kind of a pleasant surprise once they got their season going. Also, Six Rivers West, really a two-team race, and the third team, I guess, is River Ridge. On the one hand, they're 8-4, but on the other hand, they're 1-2 in the conference. And obviously, it's far too early to say that they're out of the conference race. They're not out of the conference race, but you kind of wonder, maybe it's River Ridge is one of those teams that how they're going to do depends on which team shows up at the end or in the for a particular game. So it's going to be interesting to see. It could be a 2 or 2.5 team perhaps race in the Six Rivers West. Certainly the pleasant surprise is the 2 teams on top of the Six Rivers East. I guess that co-op thing was a pretty good idea because only Monticello's undefeated, and Argyle, Pecatonica, they only have 1 loss this year. And I'm sure there's a lot of people like, where did these teams come from?
Mm-hmm.
Forgetting probably how good the season was for Monticello last season. But those 2 teams have really kind of opened some eyes, I think. And the other team that I think's opened eyes as well is probably Wazeeka Steuben, because they've only lost 1 game this year, and they're on top of the Region Valley Conference. So I guess that's my thumbnail sketch. Take a look at how things have gone. A few surprises, pleasant surprises. There have been some unpleasant surprises also. And again, similar to the boys' side, it's kind of interesting to me that there's a group up at the top and there's a group in the bottom, and there's really not that many mid-level teams. And I can't give an explanation as to why that is, but that seems to be the case this year.
Yeah, the conference that's most intriguing to me right now is the Six Rivers West, just because I think once we saw Highland beat Belmont, it felt like the conference is a lot more wide open now than it was before. And you see River Ridge at 1-2, they're 8-4 overall. Shullsburg, 1-1 with a 3-9 record, although I think that record's a bit deceptive because of 1, the teams that they've played, and 2, the injuries and illnesses that they've had on that team. Having to chat with Nathan Russell before one of the game that they had at Belmont, he had mentioned that, had he known that the injuries and illnesses of the team they wouldn't have scheduled as many games as they did. So, but that's a very experienced Shullsburg team. And I think that they very much, factor into this, but I think, Belmont falling to Highland, I think that definitely makes, this conference a lot more intriguing. And we have some big matchups coming up on Thursday night on Queen Bee Radio, where we will have Belmont at Potosi Cassville on Super Hits 106. We will also have Benton at Shullsburg on Extreme 107.1, and then Highland goes to River Ridge. We'll have that one on 97.7 Country WGLR. A quick note about that Highland River Ridge game. If you remember how that game ended last year in Patch Grove, it was a 3-pointer by Braylon Quick with 1.2 seconds to go in overtime that River Ridge was able to come away with the win. Highland at the top of the conference, River Ridge sitting in that number 4 spot. You had mentioned about teams being at the top of the conference. There's a little more polarity. Teams that are really good. Teams that aren't good aren't that good. I feel like the Six Rivers West, there's 4, potentially 5 teams, depending on, what kind of night Benton has. This seems like open season in the Six Rivers West.
Well, and in that sense, I think that one thing that could happen, and it could happen particularly with River Ridge maybe, or maybe even more so Shullsburg. Shullsburg, if they ever get past the injuries and the illnesses, and I know they do have a player who's out for the season who would have played a lot this year. Mm-hmm. But, sometimes teams that make unexpected postseason runs are the kinds of teams that didn't perform for whatever reason in the regular season. And particularly, in the Six Rivers West, they're playing everybody's playing everybody in the postseason. So you could see, as an example, maybe Shullsburg gets it together toward the end of the regular season, and then all of a sudden surprises everybody, and they're like, "Where's this team been?" And the answer is, well, they didn't have that team this year during the regular season because they had a ton of illnesses and injuries. That is a possibility. I think certainly Belmont is far from done, obviously in the conference. They've had, they've kind of not been what they, I think, kind of expected. I think everybody kind of thought it was going to be, Belmont's to lose. But I do know that I had a coach tell me that he thought that Highland was going to be a dark horse in the conference. And I think to this point, they're on top. That kind of demonstrates that he was right, So, but that is probably the most unpredictable conference to this point. Everybody else, it's, in the SWC, it's going to be Platteville or Dodgeville or Prairie or maybe, a co-championship. Swallow's going to be interesting, but it's a very top-heavy conference. The top 4 teams are a lot better than the bottom 4 teams. So, yeah, I think the Six Rivers West could be one of those that's definitely worth watching up until the end of the season.
Yeah, once you see Darlington play teams like Mineral Point, coming up, they'll be playing against each other on Tuesday. So that'll be a very interesting team to keep an eye on. And I think, teams like Darlington where, again, you have, Cuba City at the top, Mineral Point in that, number 2 spot with a 9-1 record. Darlington, you just kind of hope that, wherever they're seated, in the postseason, that they're as far away from, Cuba City and Mineral Point as much as possible so that, the deeper that you go, you have an opportunity to, meet them for that third time to potentially take them down in the postseason. So very, very intriguing how the girls' side of things have shaken out so far. And, again, that Six Rivers West, a very interesting conference to have an eye on. Again, we'll have 3 games on a Thursday night. Belmont at Potosi Cassville on Super Hits 106. Benton at Shullsburg on Extreme 107.1. Highland at River Ridge on 97.7 Country WGLR. We also have games on Saturday with River Ridge Scales Mound at Potosi Cassville on Super Hits 106. And then the first game of the girls-boys doubleheader, we will have Darlington at Highland on Extreme 107.1. On Monday evening, Benton at Iowa Grant in non-conference action. We'll have that on Extreme 107.1. And then on Tuesday the 9th, very intriguing matchup here, non-conference action, Wazeeka-Steuben at River Ridge. That'll be a fun girls basketball matchup. We'll have that one on 97.7 Country WGLR. And before I forget, Steve, because I forgot to mention it during the boys segment, it's the return of the Steve's High Five. We have high fives for both boys and girls basketball. Since we are talking girls hoops right now, let's run down the first high five of this girls basketball season that you have. And at the top, for obvious reasons, since you are the Galena truther, you have Galena in the number 1 spot. You have Mineral Point at number 2, Albany Monticello at 3, Argyle Pecatonica at 4, and then a tie for 5th between Wazeeka-Steuben and Darlington. Talk about the rationale and thought process behind this initial high five on the girls' hoops side.
Well, I do think Galena, in fact, I guess my reason to pick Galena as number 1 is they've already beaten a team in this area, Cuba City. So that's partly it. Certainly Mineral Point's record speaks for itself. So does Albany Monticello's records, the fact that they have a total of 0 losses. So, actually Mineral Point's got 1. Now, see, this is where I get a little confused because Darlington and Mineral Point are both playing really well. And, okay, so Mineral Point's got 1 loss, which is 1 more than Albany Monticello has, and the same number that Argyle Pecatonica has. And, it's just – I could have picked, if I wanted to, more than 6 teams on the girls' side because there are some other teams that are just below that threshold that are having very good seasons this year. But I kind of figured I'd start with, those 6 teams and kind of see where it takes off. But I do think that Galena is the team to beat yet. Maybe that changes, but those are the teams that I kind of feel are the best in the area at the moment on the girls' side.
Yeah, the only team that I would insert in there is Cuba City. I know that their record is 7-4, but I mean that is as brutal a schedule as you can have with the number of teams that they've seen, and they have beaten Mineral Point head to head. So I would maybe put Cuba City somewhere in that top five. I would maybe move Mineral Point to that number 4 spot and have Cuba City in number 3, somewhere in there, at least from teams that we've seen. But again, embrace debate. That's what we do here. And real quickly, since we did forget the boys one, let's run down the boys high five. Mineral Point is number 1, Darlington number 2, Scales Mound number 3, Potosi 4, and then a tie for 5th between North Crawford and Platteville. I'm sure some of that similar logic that you mentioned with the girls applies to the boys as well.
Yeah, talk about a strong top 5 or 6 there. I mean, North Crawford is undefeated. I'm not quite sure anybody saw that coming up. And as we mentioned before, Platteville lost its first 2 games to the 1 and 2 teams in this list. They haven't lost since. Scales Mound, people I think tend to forget that, they got to the state championship game last year, and they actually had a worse record than the team that got to state the year before. They have not been avoiding difficult teams to play, and as we said, playing in the Michael Alexander tournament, playing Shullsburg for the second time, maybe that, is kind of the reason that they got beat. And Potosi, if your one loss is to Darlington, I don't think that that's a particularly bad mark against you, So so that's my thought. And obviously, this is stuff that can change from week to week. Certainly, the girls' side could change in a week when Darlington and Point play each other, that's certainly possibly the case. But that's just kind of how things pan out, I think, at the moment.
Yeah, I think the only thing I might push back on is where Platteville is at. Granted, I haven't seen Platteville play in person yet, but their resume is that Platteville's only 2 losses are to Mineral Point and Darlington. So I do see that they could be moved up, but I also understand the logic of who do you bump down in that case, with Scales Mound being at number 3. But what's interesting is that Potosi does have matchups against both Platteville and Mineral Point on their schedule yet this season, which we will be, seeing how those games pan out. And those are going to be some monster matchups. Granted, those are non-conference games, but still very important games as far as momentum and, might factor into tournament seeding as well. And yeah, it's hard to argue against North Crawford, when you're, undefeated in that regard. There's definitely a lot of logic, and this kind of goes back to the very initial discussion that we had to begin the show, is that the teams that are at the top, those are very, very good teams, and there's a lot of very good teams at the top of our area's conferences.
Yeah, definitely. Most of them are not a surprise. That Mineral Point would be good this year, or Darlington, or Scales Mound, or Potosi. Not sure where North Crawford came from, and Platteville, after having as difficult a first 2 game schedule as you could want to find, well, they haven't lost, and actually they haven't, I think, necessarily really been pushed that much. They've really dominated everybody that they have played. That Monona Grove game is going to be interesting, because Monona Grove is about twice their size, although on Monday in Milwaukee, they're only 5-4 this year. But again, they play in a primarily Division I conference, and Monona Grove is a Division II school. So that's going to be that's going to be fun basketball to watch, I think. And the other thing, obviously, is, what is North Crawford going to do this season? Because I hate to put it this way, but we've always, there's been a tendency to discount the Ridge and Valley Conference because they have a kind of an unfortunate long record of underperforming or not performing at all in the postseason. Forgetting, of course, that Wazika Steuben went to state a couple of times, at least once. Maybe this is North Crawford's year as far as how everything is panning out for them. As phrase goes, we'll see.
Yep, and not all 10-0 records are the same. It's who you faced and what level of competition. And again, we haven't seen North Crawford play yet, but if they do run against one of our local teams and we're able to see them, I think it'd be a very intriguing matchup to see how North Crawford does, and that's definitely one of the teams that we'll have our eye on the rest of the way. So that will wrap up.
And guess, by the way, guess which two teams on that list are in the same half sectional in Division 5?
Right.
Potosi and North Crawford.
Mm-hmm. Yep, very, very interesting. And again, we saw Royal, that's another team, they went to state last year, out of the Scenic Bluffs. So yeah, always, it's going to be a very fun finish, once we, get down, but, a lot of games to be played and conferences to be decided. So should be fun to see how it turns out, and looking forward to seeing these games as we have now officially transitioned into the 2024 portion of the schedule. Thank you, Steve, for chatting both boys and girls basketball this week. Also, thanks to Chuck Rasmussen for his wrestling insights, and our one-on-one with the great one interview guest, Dan Burreson, the head coach of the Mineral Point Pointers boys basketball team. That'll wrap things up for this week's episode of the Queen Bee Radio High School Sports Roundup. We'll see you for another episode next week on YouTube and SoundCloud.